Hey friends, it's Melvin. Thanks for tuning into this episode. Here's just a few quick things I wanted to notify you guys about before we get started. First up, very soon, new episodes will be releasing Wednesday mornings rather than Tuesday. So don't panic if you don't see a new episode on Tuesday. Just wait a little longer and you'll see it in your feed. Second, we've introduced a mailbag. Check those show notes and toward the bottom you'll see a mailbag link. You'll then be able to text us any questions you might have about movies, the movie industry, or any movie/Christian related questions you might have. Then we'll respond in a future episode, so send us your questions now. Up next, Patreon polls, which are available to Patreon supporters at the $3 tier or higher, have been updated. Supporters can now suggest films or shows to be reviewed at the end of each month. The two most liked submissions will become the options for the Patreon poll, so if you want to hear us talk about your favorite movie or show, join our Patreon and start campaigning. And lastly, whether you're a new or longtime listener, please consider writing a review or rating the Cinematic Doctrine podcast on iTunes and Spotify. Apart from financially supporting on Patreon, these are the two most helpful ways to support the show. And that's it. Enjoy the episode. You're listening to Cinematic Doctrine. Call me if you get lost.
Are you trying to start a Tyler the Creator conversation with me?
Yeah, did you listen to the new Tyler the Creator album?
I have not, actually.
It's pretty good.
I've been meaning to, but
it's different. That's the only cold open I have, because I don't know. It'd be nice to talk about that, but I know we're not a music podcast.
I have not. It's interesting you say it's different, too, because I thought Igor was super different.
It is. Well, so I really like Igor, and this one's, totally different to Igor. It's much more like his older stuff with some Igor in it.
Okay, is it like Cherry Bomb at all? Because I really liked Cherry Bomb.
Maybe, because I didn't listen to much of that.
Okay.
Oh, Milo, you can't be here.
How's your cat in there?
Yeah, I forgot to put him away. Everyone who's listening now doesn't know, but I have a cat. And this guy talks like crazy. And so I have to put him in another room.
Are we cutting this whole opening minute?
No, it's staying. We got 4 more minutes before we really got to talk.
Okay. So, this was my first movie back in the theaters.
Oh, that's right,
first time back.
Let's talk about that before, because this is probably the first movie back for a lot of people.
Yes.
For a lot of people.
Based on trying to buy tickets on AMC with like the app and the website, every theater was packed. There was I'm not against sitting up next to other people. I, however, do not want to sit into like a theater where like the only seats available are front row and then 1 or 2 seats scattered among like big families and groups. So I desperately was trying to find like a suitable theater. And I I didn't see it on Thursday, which I should have. So I was trying to see it on a Friday night, which is dumb. And we had to record today for it, so it's not like I could like put it off till today to watch it.
Right, like for comparison's sake, the last few episodes of the podcast we recorded like weeks ahead.
Yes.
But then for Black Widow, because we know it's a big deal, we're recording Saturday, and this episode's going to be up 2 days later on Monday. Right. So like our schedule's tight right now.
And man, oh man, are people going to have stuff to talk about with this movie? But so like I bit the bullet and saw like it in 3D, which I hate doing, especially for movies like this.
Whoa, wacky! It's in your face.
There's like a handful of moments where someone like points a knife at the screen or something.
A real Robert Rodriguez moment.
Yeah, or like Friday the 13th in 3D, or someone's using a yo-yo at the screen.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah,
that kind of thing. So I ended up seeing in 3D, and there's an initial moment where you sit down and Maria Menounos is talking to you and you're like, this is awesome. I missed this. I missed when they had put games on screen for 40 seconds for some reason. This is great. And then I was at the theater like, I don't even know, like 30 to 40 minutes early. I was like reading a book for the college group I'm running. And then the first people come to the theater and sit down right next to me. And it's 2 bros who they're a cross between like Reddit Marvel fans and like stoners, because they were just like they were talking and they were like swearing and they were like drinking. It was just horrible. Like their conversations were bad. They were saying mean things about other movies and franchises, talking about like, who even sees the Fast and Furious movies? And I was like, oh, well, Furious 7's pretty good, under my breath.
Yeah.
And then slowly the theater's just filling up, and it's families and groups of teenagers. And right to my right are 2 girls who are maybe 11 or 12 years old who don't have parents. at the theater. I'm assuming they were born at some point,
They
but
just don't have parents. They're just like
they materialized in
right in
the
front of you,
theater,
yeah.
and they are just talking nonstop. And to the point where they were starting to annoy, so other moms in the theater were yelling at them, just like, please be quiet, please stop talking.
Wait, like during the movie. So this isn't just the pre-section.
This is not during the preview. I could feel it. So I gave everyone leniency. I'm like, you can talk during the previews. That's fine. But the moment the movie starts, especially this movie, which has a very puzzling opening credit scene.
Yes, it does.
But like, please do not talk during this movie. And then so other moms are just yelling at them. So they try to be quiet, but then they're just wrinkling bags.
Literally the first time back in 15 months for so many people. And it's like everything that everyone hated about movie theaters is on display.
Yes. Everyone forgot movie theater etiquette. It was crazy. People were getting up and walking away. Anytime there wasn't presently fighting on screen, people would like talk or like get up to get more snacks, or they'd take way too long to open bags. One person spent 5 whole minutes opening a bag during the dinner scene where they're all together. It was
because they wanted to. It's the 4D experience.
It's like smell-o-vision. Yeah, they wanted to eat food
with all of them.
It was not great. And then I went to Taco Bell after the movies, and I was in the drive-thru, and I was like, okay, I haven't had Taco Bell in a year. What am I going to get? And so I was like, could I have the chicken chalupa? And the person's just like, we don't have that. He just like cut me off before I could finish. I was like, okay, could I have a second?
I want to go back to quarantine where I don't have to see people anymore.
They don't yell at me. And I ordered, and they spent 15 minutes getting my food. I was at the drive-thru window. There's just 2 people there on their phone talking and not giving me my food. And I was like, what is happening? And then I gave it to me. I took one bite, and then my taco exploded in my face all over me as I was driving home. And I'm like, I'm trying to eat food off my lap because the cheese is melting my pants because I don't have AC in my car, and it's like 100 degrees. And then as I'm there, my wife texts me, and she's like, I'm locked out of the apartment. I can't get into the apartment. I'm like, I'm racing home as I got Taco Bell all over me, and I'm like sweating.
You're thinking to yourself, Kevin Feige knows why we love watching these miniseries. It's because I don't have to sit in a room where dude bros are talking and being disgusting.
Yeah.
Teenage girls are talking the entire movie, and a bunch of moms are complaining, and I don't have Taco Bell spilling on my lap.
All these characters
I can just stay at home, sit on my couch, pause it to go to the bathroom. I can get Uber
Taco
Eats
Bell
if I
in
want.
Peace. Yeah.
Oh, I spilled. I can pause the movie. Like I don't have to panic while I'm driving.
My wife isn't locked out of the apartment.
Yeah, I can just open the door.
All those people I mentioned in the theater, they will come back at the end of the movie, by the way. They're characters that are recurring in this episode because they had a lot of things to say during the movie. Also, I thought it'd be fun. I wrote down all of the trailers that played during this because I haven't seen movie trailers in a theater in forever. Do you remember what movie trailers played before your movie?
Snake Eyes was one, which I thought this trailer was better than the last few I've seen. I also just want to see a cool martial arts flick, so that sounds fun. Jungle Cruise, which they've been advertising for like 3 years, because I remember like we covered that in like 2018 or something.
Yeah,
maybe like early 2019. But like even then, it was like 9 months before the movie was coming out, so I don't know why I was advertising then. I think I saw that trailer first when I saw Maleficent, the second one.
Okay, the second one.
So that was way before.
I saw someone tweet. They were like, Jungle Cruise, Free Guy, and the Kingsman don't actually exist. They exist only as trailers that we'll be playing before every movie and severe to the end of time.
Yeah, Kingsman was another one too. That one, I sat down, I was like, it's like they're advertising a completely different movie, because I've seen like the trailer that was back in like early 2020. Then I saw the trailer for it when Tenet was coming out, and it was a different trailer. It was way worse edited. It was like the kind where they're like, get something out quick. People are in theaters again. And then nobody was in theaters again. And then this version was totally different. Was there a Venom trailer? Because we got in as the trailers were going on.
I did not see. So my trailers wrote them down. Escape Room Tournament of Champions.
Oh, I can't. We're so hyped for that one. I can't wait.
Is this the third Escape Room movie?
No, it's the second one. Netflix put up one that was called No Escape Room.
Okay.
And it's not a Netflix movie. It's probably like Asylum style, where they're like, let's make one that's very similar.
Yeah, you can't copyright the concept of escaping a room. So I'm guessing there's going to be a lot of knockoffs.
I want a sequel. Yes. Yes. Return
hallway. Just the exact opposite of everything.
I could not make heads or tails of this. I was just, I was baffled by this trailer. I was like, wait, what is it? So it's an evil escape room organization that's attacking children?
It's, dude, you would love. Did you see the first escape room?
No.
You would love it. It's so fun. It's just bizarre and stupid, and it's that PG-13 horror aesthetic where it's like it never really pushes the boundaries, but it has a sort of, it doesn't have the Spirit Halloween aesthetic. Every year has a Spirit Halloween aesthetic film. I think last year's was Hubie Halloween.
Yes.
And the year before that was Hellfest, the year before that was Haunt from Shudder, and then the year before that was Hellfest. But
Nazi Haunt.
They have a similar aesthetic like that. But and I saw the Shang-Chi trailer. This one I thought was better than the last one.
Yep.
But that movie looks pretty dull.
So when the Shang-Chi trailer played, the two bros next to me, one guy just turned to that guy and was like, "That's Abomination from The Incredible Hulk." And then half the theater just went, and nodded at the same time.
What do you mean that's Abomination? Mean in the
big green guy that is fighting in the cage? That's Abomination from The Incredible Hulk.
Is it?
Yes.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So does that mean we're going to get Sam Rockwell in this movie too?
He was played by Tim Roth in The Incredible Hulk.
No, I know, but if we're going to bring back Phase 1 or Phase 2 people,
so
Sam Rockwell better show up again. Maybe he'll be in the Hawkeye series.
So there's a lot of rumors about that because he's been pretty vocal about I'd love to come back to those movies.
And everybody wants him to come back. He's
awesome. And his character, Justin Hammer, is an awesome character.
Super good.
And it's a shame that he's only been seen in that. He was in Iron Man 2, and then he was in the short film All Hail the King.
Right.
But so a lot of people want him to come back for Armor Wars, which is going to be like a Disney Plus series focused on War Machine and all those characters. So he'd be a perfect villain for that series. But also, if you notice, in this movie lays more of the groundwork for this, there's a running thing where it appears...
In Black Widow?
Yes, it appears that they're recruiting characters for a Thunderbolts, aka bad Avengers. So Justin Hammer would be a great evil Iron Man character, or he'd be great to show up in Black Panther 2.
So is this Invincible, where the CIA they beat up the bad guys, but then the CIA is like, "Hey, come work for us."
Yes, it's kind of like that.
The Mauler twins, why don't you come over here and make another clone?
Thunderbolt Ross, who's also in this movie, Black Widow. He assembles his own version. He assembles there's also the Dark Avengers. It gets a little muddy. There's all these different characters. But yeah, during Civil War in the comics, for example, he assembles a group of bad guy Avengers to track down the heroes, if I remember correctly. So yeah, Justin Hammer or Sam Rock will be great for that. Also, the trailer for Space Jam 2 played, and that movie just looks horrendous.
Oh, yeah, I did. I guess I missed
bad.
that one. But yeah, I keep hearing that it looks really
bad. And part of it is we all have collective amnesia where we all think the first Space Jam was a good movie. It's not. Go back and watch it. It's interesting because there's so many weird things in it where Bill Murray's in the movie for some reason. And there's all these NBA players just playing themselves. There's enough weird elements in it where it stands out, but just as a movie. It's not funny. It's not good. It's never been good.
And it's got different voice actors. It doesn't have the same voice actors for the Looney Tunes.
Zendaya is Lola Bunny.
Yeah, it's really strange. Hey there, it's your friendly neighborhood call to action. Just checking in on you. Hope you're doing all right. I'm just stopping by to say, if you enjoy the show, you can always subscribe and write a review for Cinematic Doctrine. There's iTunes, Podchaser, basically anywhere you listen. You can give us a shout out with a thumbs up, 5 stars, gripping positivity. Or if you hate the show, you can say that too.
Wait, what? What are you saying? Why are you saying
Well, I'm not going to tell them what to do, Ted. They're free to do what they want. Our analytics say we got a lot of listeners in the US, and they love their freedoms. And you're also free to check out our Twitter. Very active there. We host polls, memes. There's also the Cinematic Doctrine Facebook group called Cinematic Doctrine Facebook Group. If you want to join, just answer the questions, read the rules, and tell them the podcast sent you. Also, you should check out our website. Some really cool stuff there. Editorials, written reviews for movies we haven't had time to cover. Always check out cinematicdoctrine.com when you get the chance. Oh, Ted also told me I shouldn't forget to mention the Patreon. Something about you can support us or something? Wait, Ted, I thought this was like a hobby thing. You want me to
expand cinematic doctrine. You know
Right,
this already.
right. Yeah, I forgot. I'm the one who put all this together. Yeah, Cinematic Doctrine has a Patreon. For as low as $3 a month, you can gain access to exclusive content like The Pre-Show, which features free-form and Christian-friendly discussions on all kinds of topics, as well as Influence the Podcast. That's right, each month you get to vote on a movie we discuss on the show. Previous movies our lovely Patreon supporters have chosen are To All the Boys I've Loved Before, Hamilton, Onward, and American Gospel Christ Alone. Huh, you guys have good taste. Anyways, I gotta run, so I'll see you guys later. But I guess at this point, we should really be talking about Black Widow.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, this is all great because let's be real. This is the first time people have been back in theaters. This is the first time that people have something to be excited about with the movies. Of course, as we talk about Black Widow, that may not be the case. I don't know. And this is sort of the first time people are seeing trailers again. Because, like, I was even talking to my wife on the ride home, and we were talking about, like, other Marvel properties. And I was like, yeah, what about that Jared Leto one? And she's like, what are you talking about? It's like Morbius. They talked about it, like, 3 years ago. And she's like, what are you talking about? And I was like,
You're crazy. You mean Joker?
yeah. So, like,
There's layers to that
all
joke.
of this is like movies have just vanished. Unless it's streaming, no one knows what's going on. So, but now we're back.
It's business as usual.
What's going on? What was Black Widow about, Dan?
What's
what is
going
this?
on? Black Widow takes place roughly after the events of Civil War and leads into the events of Infinity War. Though obviously it jumps around in time a lot. The beginning of the movie is about 1995, if I remember correctly,
Yes.
where we see Mila Jovovich's daughter playing young Black Widow, which is kind of interesting. And we see that there's like an idyllic little family. Rachel Weisz is the mom. David Harbour is playing David Harbour as the dad with a Russian accent. And so, but the movie follows Black Widow's attempts to go back and take down the Red Room, where she was trained to be Black Widow, as was her pseudo-adopted sister. And throughout the movie, we learn the history of like her dysfunctional family, what the Black Widow program is, what its implications for geopolitical events are, as well as Black Widow has to both come to terms with herself and how she views others and her family, and sort of form a dysfunctional bond with these people as they take down this evil organization. And that's about it. That's kind of interesting, is like in terms of actual plot, there's not a ton, but
There's not a lot. There's not a lot even in terms of big setups for later on or anything, but that kind of makes sense since this movie's set between two movies from like 2017.
right. And which does hurt some of the tension, because it's like, is she gonna die? Like, of course she's gonna survive the movie.
Right.
She has to, unless it's pulled something crazy, like she dies and she's replaced with like an LMD or something. But the post-credit scene has a lot of implications for the future. But the movie itself is pretty standard. And as we'll get into, my feeling is that there's kind of two movies at odds with each other throughout the whole thing. And there's one character we haven't mentioned because it's weirdly downplayed, and then it's going to be the thing everyone talks about. But Taskmaster is also in the movie.
That's
and
right.
he's being sent to kill Black Widow / get the movie's MacGuffin, which is that there is this mist serum-y thing that can free the Black Widows from the control of Ray Winstone, playing one of the more likable characters he's ever played. And so he's kind of the villain who doesn't have a lot of screen time, but Ray Winstone plays one of the more despicable characters to appear in a Marvel film, which, if you're familiar with his acting career, was not surprising, as he exclusively plays the most scummiest human beings on Earth. So that's Black Widow for the most part. It's it's simultaneously very standard for a Marvel film, yet I feel like it's almost too much for the type of movie they kind of wanted to make, because you really feel like they wanted to kind of make almost like a Bourne movie, but with Scarlett Johansson.
Right.
But it has to also be a Marvel movie, so there's a giant flying space fortress in it as well. It's really something. What did you think about this movie, Melvin?
Yeah, I thought it was okay. I thought it had some had some Winter Soldier energy, where it's like kind of like you said, a Bond movie, but not entirely a Bond movie. Because there is some interesting stuff where it's like you have these characters traveling around. They're in safe rooms, but you never know if they're totally safe. So you're kind of getting that a bit from like I think Falcon and Winter Soldier, the show, kind of handled that a little better, but that's also because it has several more hours to play with, where you're having your tactical espionage, traveling around, trying to be safe. So the tension isn't so much, oh, are they going to finish this fight? The tension is, will they get through this without fighting? But because it's a big movie, and it's also the first movie that people are kind of coming back to see, people want to see big action fights. And I was getting pretty tired that the first 20 minutes was constant, like, just fighting. Like even Scarlett Johansson and Florence Pugh's like introduction as they meet each other is a fight scene that you're sort of like, you don't really need to be fighting. And then like as they're fighting, there are parts where they can stop fighting and they keep fighting until they stop fighting, and then they're just like making dinner. And it's just like, all right, but like I didn't need that. Like, let's slow down. And I think that's really tough, especially like let's just get into this right away. We've just watched we're almost about to finish Loki. We've watched 3 long-running miniseries of Marvel shows, and it's been like what's almost made them their best parts is that they've shown that you can use these fantastical characters and do more than just have them fight each other. You can have them have really good character drama. You can have them have really good comedy, even in some cleverness and stuff. Like WandaVision is an incredibly funny show, but it's not having one entire actor be just a comedic character. Like, what a waste to have David Arbor in your movie, but all he does is make jokes the whole time. Like, he is a really good actor, and then I'm expecting him to choose some scenes with some good humor, but then they sort of just gave him like nothing but jokes, and that was really frustrating. But Florence Pugh's also killing it, so I guess I'm okay. I don't know. It was good. I enjoyed being in the theater, but I've also been in the theater several times since coming back. I think since like March. And I wouldn't say it was my best theater experience since coming back. I think Judas and the Black Messiah is still my best one. And contrary to your just general aesthetic theater experience, mine was fine in theaters. And I think someone even brought a kid, like a baby, and every now and then it would like cry, but it wasn't even that loud, and it kind of just stopped after a bit, and so it was like fine. So my experience was pretty good, but it was kind of cute that like when the movie starts and the Marvel thing starts triggering, someone starts clapping, but then they stopped because no one else started clapping. So it was just like, I think I lucked out, and I also went at 9 p.m. So like I got the group that was like everyone's tired and just trying to tick off the box, and I saw a Dolby screening, so it's pretty expensive. So it that's sort of like the barrier of entry when it's like a $22 ticket, but you have AMC A-list, so it's basically free. I don't know. I had a good time, but it is like, it left me wanting a lot more. I found most of the action sequences less interesting here. The fact that this movie is set during a time where we know she's going to survive, plus it's a Marvel movie, means that there's really no threat involved. And I think this is going to sound like a strange comparison, but something really cool about the Dragon Ball series is that knowing that nobody really dies in the series is totally fine, because more of the tension is built around other stuff. And so when you're reading through Dragon Ball and you're having a new tournament and you're having these new fights, the tension is not will they die, but like what's going to happen to these characters in the surrounding situations. And Marvel movies sometimes do that well, because like we're watching Loki and it's not about will he die, but it's like more about like will he grow. And even WandaVision isn't really about will she die. It's more about like why is Vision alive? Yeah. and then Black Widow is almost like, I don't know, there's really no risk of her dying, but then but there's also no real risk. There's no real character growth either, because there's no, I don't know. I'm trying to think like what was the purpose of this movie in terms of building her as a character? It almost felt like the movie existed purely as finally we're going to have a Black Widow movie because we don't have, what was his name? Ike Perlmutter running the show and deciding that no one was going to see a woman film, which was totally irrational.
The movie is a test to see if people will like Florence Pugh as a new Black Widow. That's what the movie is.
Yeah, right. And I know that like Feige and people involved with the franchise loved her performance, and so they wanted to give her equal screen time. That's why there's like there's like 3 intros to this movie. There's the 1995, the borderline 9 Inch Nails edited title sequence.
Okay, I need to talk.
We
about
need to
this
talk
for
about
1
that.
second.
But then you have Florence's introduction, and then you have Scarlett Johansson's introduction again. But it's so I get that, but still, yeah. Let's talk about that intro because that was like really strange.
It's there's 2 components to this. First off, it's bold to start your movie with an opening credit scene that's just basically human trafficking. It is shots of scared children being huddled into giant crates and up against walls while crying,
and your villain going, "Get rid of the disabled" or whatever.
Yes,
like, oh my gosh,
yeah. There's that component to it, and it's jarring. It's shocking. The people in the theater I was in were not ready for that, especially the 2 12-year-old girls I was sitting next to
that just randomly appeared. This is their first experience in the theater.
It's like, hey kids, let's watch a bunch of crying girls get whisked and stolen away. But
then the show never keeps the tone.
But
it never keeps that
the
tone.
The weird thing is that they decided to go with the thing of, well, let's have someone sing a slow, solemn version of a well-known pop
Smells
song.
Like Teen Spirit.
And it smells like Teen Spirit. I have never simultaneously been horrified and almost start laughing in the middle of the theater. It was the worst possible song choice. It's hilariously does not fit the tone. It doesn't fit the scene.
And it never carries. Like, my first thought was, oh, okay, Phase 4 wants to be more serious. But then the rest of the movie happens, and it's not more serious until, like, the climax. But that's only the conversation between ScarJo and the main villain.
Evil Russian Man.
Yeah, Evil Russian Man number 12. And that's like 10 minutes. But yeah, isn't that
it's
just
so crazy. I was
so
flabbergasted. Weird. It's just hello, how low, and it's like crying girls. I was like, what emotion do you want from me right now? I don't.
Right.
This is crazy. Florence Pugh, I don't know how to say her last name. She's terrific in this movie. She hits all the right notes. She's funny. She's charming. She oozes charisma.
She takes control of the scene. There was even like at the end of the movie. There's a touching moment and she's like basically hugging ScarJo, but the way she hugs her and moves her head, you could tell the cameraman wasn't like ready for anything because they're basically told, get a portrait shot, make sure you track her face. And like she moves her head and then like the camera tracks down because it didn't know, like the person didn't. And then she moves her head again. And so it had to like follow her around. And she's always so confident in what she's doing. And it's always fun to sort of see how everyone's trying to catch up. And like both my wife and I just loved like it's such a small thing, but she boops her nose against a beer. And it's like, she's just so casual in front of the camera. Everything I've seen her in, like she just a pure natural actor. And I think that's even like her acting background was she just decided one day to just like, I'm going to go to an acting class and see like kill some time. Maybe this will be a cool hobby for me. And then she just took off. It's like the last 4 years she's been killing it.
She's just a natural star. She has that star quality that you always are looking for. So it's no surprise, and I guess this is a spoiler, but like she's already been confirmed to be in like the Hawkeye show. They're already trying to like sign her to as many projects as possible, probably, because she has legit acting cred. She was in Midsummer. She's in Fighting for My Family. So she's in these smaller movies that like internet nerds really like. And so now she's like transitioning into like big star roles. So it's not at all a surprise that they're trying to like position her as
let's get her quick.
Yeah. They're like, she's getting too big too fast. They're trying to like contain her in a sense. But yeah, like I said, it feels like there's almost 2 movies at play because you talk about that first scene where like Scarlett Johansson and the 2 Black Widows, let's say, start fighting each other for almost no reason. They just start fighting. But first off, one thing I like, and this is, I don't know if this is something that Kate Shortland specifically brought to the film, but one of her ideas appears to be, let's try and make these action scenes as realistic as possible, to the extent of like, I mean, it feels like people are getting hit. Like they had a lot of crunching noises. People like their choreography is a little sloppy on purpose, where they're landing hits.
People are tired.
People look tired. Yeah, the damage shows on them. There's a shot where like Scarlett Johansson's back is shown. She's just covered in bruises. So like people are hitting each other, there's crunching noise. People in my theater were wincing during a lot of the fight scenes because it just like hurt. It felt like it hurt, and they were choking each other.
David Arbor's second introduction, the guy's wrist gets
Oh
busted.
my gosh,
this is awesome.
People freaked out. That stuff is great. Like I am so for that. But then like they still also have to do Marvel things. So there's scenes where Scarlett Johansson's literally careening off debris in the midair while falling. So it's like, which is it? Is this a movie where everyone gets hurt all the time and the damage really wears on them? Because there's attention given where they're getting tired, like they're running from people and their breathing gets heavier as they're running. But then they're also like blowing up buildings and jumping out of windows again. So which is it?
You kind of want your scene where like, remember, did you see Overlord from a few years ago?
No, the
Nazi zombie film with Wyatt Russell again?
No, and Agent Fitz from Agents of Shields in it.
Yeah, because like basically like that movie, they all progressively look more exhausted as the film goes on, and then they're like, ah, crap, there's zombies now, and so like the movie just, you get tired with them, and so when this movie tries to do that a bit too, like they bring up a couple times in the first half of the film how ScarJo doesn't have powers. she's just got guns, and that's like really all like quite interesting. And then she's flying through space, not through space, but like
pretty close to space.
The atmosphere like might as well be space. I don't know, like you said, pick one. Come on,
because they also they want to have this like big spy story. So like the idea is that their adopted mother, Rachel Weisz, who big get for the movie, she is the main scientist who helped program the mind control stuff they use in the Black Widows. Scarlett Johansson's generation of Black Widows, there was more of like a mental conditioning, but later generations, they just straight up take away people's free will. Florence Pugh is one of these people. So early on in the movie, the person that Florence Pugh is chasing sprays her with the stuff and it frees her mind, setting the events of the film in motion. And so they kind of have like a weird, awkward way of getting there, where initially they break David Harbour's Red Guardian out of prison. He is a great character. He's a wannabe Captain America who holds on to the glory days where he was, and he sees himself as an equal to Captain America. He asks if like Captain America's been asking about him. Of course he hasn't. No one remembers the Red Guardian. So he's this has-been who never was, and he's schlubby and he's a little overweight. It's a great character to give him.
Theoretically.
And so they break him out. In theory, I'm seeing a lot of people liked him a lot. He's like a lot of people's runaway favorite character in the movie.
I just wish he had more drama.
He doesn't have a lot to do.
Yeah.
He's there, but he doesn't. They even try and give him like the big
moment,
climactic battle scene at the
end. There's like no moment. And even his fight with Taskmaster at the end is like, you barely see any of it.
Which is a bummer. I was really disappointed by that. But so initially they break him out because they're like, you'll know where the Red Room is. He's like, no, I don't. So they just have to keep going.
So now he's just there. Yeah, they're just dragging him along.
So they go to Rachel Weisz, who does. And so this is like movie A, where like what is happening is when they were kids, both Scarlett Johansson and Florence Pugh remember the family they had in Ohio in 1995. And for them, this is their happiest moments of their life. This is the childhood that they lost. And their parents and Scarlett Johansson, to an extent, are like, this was a cover. We were put there by Russia to spy on America. This isn't real. But undeniably, there was something there where they, like, naturally, both Rachel Weisz and David Harbour still parent the kids. Like, she's still trying to mother them. She's correcting their posture. And so there's this uneasy, like, family dynamic that
which is good.
Which is great stuff. Like, and then, of course, Florence Pugh, when she's crying and she's upset, it feels very real.
Yeah, she was... There's really no emotional attachment except for... I just think she's a fantastic actress.
She's
so like
really good.
You're there. You're like, oh my gosh, yeah, girl, this hurts.
And that stuff's great. The stuff where Scarlett Johansson and Florence are just hanging out and having bickering. It feels like sibling bickering. It's a great little moment where like they're having an argument about the vest, and then Florence Pugh like thinks she's convinced her to think her jacket's cool, and Scarlett's like, yeah, okay. But then they linger on Scarlett's face where you can tell that she's like happy to be with her sister and proud of her, even if she didn't say it out loud.
Or even when Flo Pugh's mocking her for the 3-point stance.
Yes.
It's like, what's this about? And like, I just loved how that just felt like it was shot by an indie film director, the way that like sequences done.
Yeah, there's like they've like the pseudo handheld camera stuff too.
So casual, so like I like this.
Yeah.
She's back in her element. She's back on the low budget flicks.
Yeah, Ari Aster is like in the background, giving her a point.
They
Like,
called him to come in,
and it's not like the material she's doing is good either.
that's why they called him to come in for the nose scene at the end too.
Oh my gosh, that's great. But which we'll get to that. But yeah, it's not even like the 3-point pose, like, oh, you're a poser. Like that joke isn't great, but the way it's delivered is great.
Because she's so good. You could give her anything.
Because she's effortlessly delivers this like not great dialogue.
And I kind of like, just to talk about her again. I mean, there's a movie on Netflix.
Let's continue talking about Florence Pugh.
Yeah, she's great. Sorry, ScarJo. They killed you off in Endgame, and it sucks because your death wasn't really that good narratively, and it was so premature. But also,
the cooler David has arrived. Yeah,
I really don't want them to just bring you back, because then that means there's no consequences in this franchise. So I'm really sorry. But there's a Netflix movie from like 2016 that she's in called Malevolent or something. But I remember watching it. That was the first movie I ever saw with her in it. And I remember thinking, like, who is this? She is way too good for this movie. And then, yeah, she was doing all these other flicks. And like, you just keep seeing it. And I don't know. She's a great actor. Check out her backlog selectively for your own sake. And look forward to Hawkeye, because she'll be way better than. Let's be real here, guys. It's a good replacement to Jeremy Renner. It's just gonna be okay.
Hawkeye is a pitch. Like, I don't know if you've read Matt Fraction's Hawkeye run, but it's what I wanted this movie to be. Where Matt Fraction's Hawkeye is the idea of like, this is what Hawkeye does. Who's not with the Avengers. He just like runs an apartment building that the mob is trying to take over. It's awesome. Like it's the grounded, realistic comic book stuff people want. It's the idea of this character in that show that's like with that pitch with what's her name's playing Kate Bishop. It's an actress a lot of people fan casted as Kate Bishop, and then she got cast for real. I don't know. That's gonna bother me. But like, that sounds great. So this made me really excited for that.
For Hawkeye?
Yeah, for Hawkeye. But like, that's movie A. The movie A is it's a sad family drama of these people who are all really hurt and they're all traumatized. And they are each other's closest thing to family, and it's in the backdrop of these horrible people that they've made, like been made into. Where like David Harbour says he's so proud of them because they've killed so many people, which I think is a great scene.
It's awesome.
You both have killed so many people. It's really good. And like, they're like, he thinks he's been a great dad, and they hate him because he basically sold them off into child slavery.
Right.
You know, that is great. And when you pair that with these gritty action scenes where like the choreography's not the best, but you feel like everyone's getting hurt, that's awesome. But then there's movie B, which is constantly happening at the same time, which is there's this Terminator Jason Voorhees character called Taskmaster who's been sent after them, which initially I was a big fan of this. He's got the whole Jason Voorhees. He just keeps walking towards you.
Yeah.
He's unstoppable Terminator.
He's intimidating. I love his outfit being a mixture of frightening and also kind of like campy, because like his colors are just like, you'd see him a mile away. Like,
right.
This guy does not blend in. Even on the poster, he's like the only blue on the poster. So it's like I'm sorry, buddy.
And he exclusively attacks at like night too, which is funny.
Yeah.
And he's like this Terminator, and he mimics your actions, which is really cool. So in the comics, he's a mercenary, but he possesses like an ability where he's like photographic memory, but they call it photographic reflexes.
It's like their Deathstroke.
He's like Deathstroke with like instead of like mild super soldier abilities, where Deathstroke has like a healing factor and stuff like that. He's like a mixture of Prometheus and Deathstroke. Where Prometheus has a helmet where like they just download all the information on the DC characters and put them in his head. This guy can just watch you. So he just watches footage of the Avengers and he can do all their moves. And like by watching Hawkeye, he can use bow and arrows and stuff. Really cool character.
Yeah.
And he's after them because you have the MacGuffin thing. And it turns out the Red Room is in a space and like stuff like that. And that's all kind of silly. It's silly compared to what's happening in the movie you're watching.
And compared to what we've been conditioned to in 2021 for Marvel, because we've had these 3 other series that even when they get fantastical are really grounded at the same time. I don't know. It was really bizarre.
Yeah, it's this horrible middle ground where Loki and WandaVision get really out there and weird. Like Loki, they're going through the multiverse. They're seeing there's other Lokis running around. There's all this crazy stuff happening where they're in like a Doctor Who, if Doctor Who was like a giant organization full of pencil pushers.
Yeah.
That's really weird. where this is like middle ground. It's not quite the big fantastical spectacle everyone wants. They're not fighting aliens or robots.
It's like phase 3 continued.
Yeah, it's like they're just fighting a bunch of Black Widows basically.
Right.
So it's not the big set piece blockbuster that people want, but it's not quite as grounded as like, I guess, more like genre fans would want. Like, it's not quite an action movie. This isn't John Wick or Atomic Blonde or something. This is just, it's a Marvel movie. So I feel like it hits this middle ground that doesn't make anyone happy, where like when in the theater I was in, people watch the action scenes, is the minute it's just Florence Pugh and Scarlett Johansson talking, people would get up and go to the bathroom. And or they would start chatting amongst themselves. Like, they didn't want to see, and it's like there's a movie trying to break out of here and nobody wants to watch it. That was my experience.
Yeah.
Like, Kate Shortland is like, okay, what if we had characters and people talk to each other? And the audience I was seeing it with didn't want that. They wanted to see more kicking and punching and things blowing up. And then they'd wince because like early on, like Florence Pugh stabs someone in the stomach and they die. Someone falls into like shallow water and dies. And they did not like that stuff. The audience like winced at it. It wasn't making anyone happy. It was very surreal.
That's so strange.
I've never been more out of sync with the audience. Yeah,
because like, so I saw Cruella in theaters, and I think first off, that would be a fun one to talk about because that's a great movie, and I think you would love it. Have you seen Cruella at all or not?
I did not know.
Well, I don't know if it's still $30 on Disney Plus, but when it's not, I definitely recommend it. But that one,
yeah, it's like I'm planning on seeing it.
It's like sneaky malicious because Cruella is not a nice character, and then they have the villain is like way more mean. And like when I saw it in theaters, there's like light violence, but like it's delivered by the main villain, and it's way like, it's shocking, it's surprising, it catches you off guard, and multiple times in that theater experience, like people are just going, like, oh my gosh, like you just got punched in the gut. And I didn't have that experience with Black Widow where people are getting hurt and injured, but I did feel like there was a bit of, I mean, maybe it's because it's a Dolby screening and it's just so loud, but not ear piercing like IMAX. Never go to IMAX. It's the worst. But like, I don't know. I think it was a lot more silent and boring and just less engaging at mine. And I don't know. For me, I just suspect it's because there are people who have really liked these WandaVisions, this Falcon and Winter Soldier, even though that's totally the weakest. And then even especially Loki, because Loki is really
great,
mature.
Yeah,
it's great, thought-provoking and in fascinating ways, and then also exciting, and then really cool set pieces. I mean, what was the third episode? What's that planet called?
Oh, the mining planet.
Great set pieces. Looks beautiful. And I don't know, like I think for me, it wasn't just that, like, it sounds like for you had people who are disinterested and letting you know it. And then for me, I think it was like, I might have had people who were either totally fine and just glad to be in the theater or just bored. I don't know. It's really strange.
I just thought I was watching, there's the one car chase in the movie where Florence kicks the door.
Yeah.
And all I was thinking of is, I just remember that scene Nobody, where the two cars just facing each other and they're shooting at each other through the windshield.
Okay.
Did you see Nobody?
I did. I saw that one in theaters too. That was a fun one.
And I was just like, I was like, action movies have just evolved. Like, this is like, if you want to see exciting, more high choreography action movies, you can watch Nobody, you can watch John Wick, you can watch The Raid. If you want to see,
if they could, what's the guy's name for The Raid?
Gareth Evans.
If they hired him to come in to do one, be sick, dude.
There was talk of him doing a Deathstroke movie for DC. That would have been
fantastic.
It apparently never got past like the early like planning stages, quote unquote. So I think a lot of people got more hyped than they should have. And
then he did Apostle, which is decent.
I haven't seen it, but yeah, like, you can watch The Night Comes for Us on Netflix, or you can watch this, And I'm not saying everyone wants either like a total bloodbath action movie or this, but it's like, you have to kind of like, it's one of those things where like Disney's model is, it's a little bit of everything for everybody. You have, it's good enough for genre fans. It's nerdy enough for Reddit and film Twitter, but it's like, it's also popcorn pleasing entertainment for the masses. And I think Black Widow might just inhibit this weird place where it's not quite any of that for anybody, where the premise, you could tell, again, like, I feel like this premise could have been way darker and more introspective and interesting. But like the minute you start doing like, yeah, this guy, there's a scene near the end of the movie where he's like, I have the one resource the world has plenty of, girls. And it's just like,
I was like,
oh
what?
my gosh.
Like,
and I was like, this could have been more of the movie, but I feel like somebody was like, oh, I don't know if parents taking their 5 kids to the movies want to see this, you know?
they definitely channeled their villain to be like, hey, you ever hear about that guy Harvey Weinstein? Like,
Well, my thought it was just bold to make your villain just the average Redditor. That was really
or Discord admin.
yeah.
I can't believe it. Oh man. But yeah, because like they made him like a sick, large old man. Because he's like hobbling around and like he can't like control his body. Like you can practically see him playing like Capone from Tom Hardy Capone, just pooping his bed.
But like he's insecure, so like she goads him into punching him in a really uncomfortable scene. But
yeah, so very much like Harvey Weinstein-esque, and even like having the combination of girls who have nothing, so they give you he like tries to convince you he can give you everything if you just give him you, and then simultaneously also like you have the potential, I'll make it possible for you if you give yourself to me. They get everything for Weinstein, but they just don't want to like,
they never say it.
they only want to do that for the title scene, and then they only want to do it for the last scene, and none of it in between.
Yeah, the word sex never comes up. They never use any of those words like assault or anything or any of that stuff. It's just heavily implied, especially the way he interacts with Rachel Weisz's character.
Yeah.
But just to make sure we cover all bases, like, so the big thing is, it turns out the reason the Red Room's never been found is it's in almost space. It's hidden. It's a cloud-based like castle in the sky. Never didn't think I would compare it to a Miyazaki film, but here we are.
Or Cloud City from Star Wars.
Or,
like, okay.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I guess that makes more sense. But so like they concoct a purposefully, because they try to do the whole like Ocean's 11 thing where they do the heist thing from like the Rick and Morty episode where they slowly reveal what the plan within the plan was to try and make the plan seem more clever than it really is.
Right.
But basically they use the face technology from Winter Soldier to sneak in. Everyone thinks they're captured, but they're really not captured. And then Black Widow ends up in the room with him. And then to give a reason for why the guy's still alive and also why he can talk to Scarlett Johansson, he has like pheromones in the room that keep Black Widows from murdering him. So like she tries to shoot him and tries to stab him.
Just weird plot points. It's like there's a lot of weird stuff in this movie that I just don't...
Again, they're trying to do Jason Bourne serious spy movie, but then they have secret pheromones that keep you from killing people. And before we get into the big reveal, I'm sure that's what the internet's going to be complaining about. You get the big villain speech, and Ray Winstone says the girls thing. He talks about how he's Black Widows all over, and Scarlett Johansson plays to his insecurity as a man, or because he likes controlling women, or she goads him into punching her a bunch of times to try and basically break her nose so she can't smell the pheromones anymore.
Right.
While they concoct a plan to get like the magic stuff in the vents and take down the base and so on and so forth. And then it does lead to one of the best moments in the movie where he finally reveals his plan because he's an idiot. And so he opens up the panel where he controls the Black Widows and stuff. And she's like, thank you. Now I have everything I need. And then she smashes her face on the desk to break her nose.
Yeah.
And that was the moment that really got the audience I was with.
I love that. I was like,
sticky
awesome.
Blood is on the desk. It's great. It's awesome. It's a great action hero scene like that. If this had happened earlier in the MCU, this might have been one of her signature moments that really made the character.
Right.
So then she starts attacking him. But the other reveal, and earlier on in the movie, you get more Black Widow's backstory, and it's actually almost comically dark because that's how it's so dark out of nowhere, where she initially tried to kill Ray Winstone's character and she had to use his daughter to get to it. So you see a little girl with her backpack, la, da, 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 and then she like blows them both up. And so she blows up a little girl. It's horrible. It's
so
like,
wild.
I couldn't believe it. And the part
that was
like,
movie A, by the way. Movie B is the fun, happy fly through space. Movie A is the everything has consequences and life is really hard.
Right. And so this thing like, you're just a murderer. You think you're an Avenger, but you're a murderer. Which is fair. Like, she's not better than Florence Pugh's character. She's done a lot of horrible things. It's been her character all the movie. So this isn't like a random.
Which I wonder if that'll be a phase 4 thing. Is that all of these heroes are like anti-heroes. because all of the quote unquote pure heroes are passed on. Like Tony Stark, not so pure, but
he redeemed himself
right,
nevertheless
with
But
the snap. But
Captain
all
America's
the other
gone.
guys are kind of passed on, and now like WandaVision,
Vision was a pure character.
Bucky, not a good guy, and redeeming himself. Falcon, fine.
But hence why he's a Captain America character.
Right. And then US Agent, obviously.
He was a bad guy. I don't know why they're trying to pretend otherwise.
We thought we'd warm up to him. And ScarJo, everyone had already been warmed up to Black Widow, but then they learned she's a potential child murderer. So
well, it turns out she's not, because Taskmaster, who in the comics, he's like we mentioned, he's a sentient dude who talks. He's Deathstroke. And so the big reveal is that the little girl, Scarlett Johansson, thought she blew up. She just horribly maimed her, and to save her life, they put like a microchip.
I gotta be honest. Did that surprise you? Because it didn't surprise me. I figured
So my initial feeling was that Rachel Weisz was going to be Taskmaster.
I kind of thought that too. I was
I knew she would turn on them, but so in the movie it turns out she alerts like the Red Room, and that's how they get on there. But then they use that to her advantage, where she feels bad because in a great scene she realizes that she was a mother to Scarlett Johansson's character.
Yeah, the great line of like, "How did you keep your heart?" And I was like, that was such a good one. I thought ScarJo's response was kind of dumb. It was like, "Pain makes you stronger." It's like, all right, Nirvana plays in the distance. Like,
well, that was something her mom told her. Or whatever, pain makes you stronger, and they super cut to her dead.
But they talked about bioluminescence. What the heck was that about?
I don't know.
End the movie on that? That was the last shot. Was bioluminescence?
I was like, maybe I should look this up. Maybe it means something, and I didn't. But so there's that.
What stuff. Is bioluminescence like? We explode our butts and things light up, and that's why we're hurting ourselves. But it makes us stronger.
Maybe Black Widows do it. Whatever. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I do a movie podcast. So I thought Rachel Weisz was gonna be it, but then as the movie went on, I was like, please don't let it be the girl.
So for you it was but that would be too stupid.
Well, so I like when Rachel Weisz wasn't Taskmaster, I was like, because also the point of the movie where she shows up is when we stop seeing Taskmaster for a long time. So I thought like those two things. So
the whole Superman's never around when Clark Kent's here kind of thing.
Yeah. Because there's that funny scene where he just Taskmaster just goes in the sewers. We don't see him again for a long time. So presumably he was just down there the whole time until we saw him again.
Or maybe it's like Tony Wonder in Arrested Development. He's hiding in the dumbwaiter until someone says Wonder, and then he crawls out real quick. Did somebody say Wonder? Or even better, it's like Gene Parmesan.
Gene!
Got me good.
Again. What was the scene? This is our there's like that urban legend that there's a Superman reference in every episode of Seinfeld. For us, it's just Arrested Development.
There's always an Arrested Development reference in the Cinematic Doctrine podcast.
But I know we're killing time because this is a thing people probably will want us to talk about. So yeah, it's the girl she exploded was horribly maimed, and she's in the machine. And when that happened, multiple people in my theater sighed in frustration. Ugh.
Man, you have great theater experiences.
I saw a bunch of nerds. Maybe it's because I'm near a city in college. I'm near multiple colleges, so maybe I just get more of like the college nerdy people who, as soon as this movie ended, they went on Twitter to complain or whatever.
Yeah,
but it was just like the air went out of the room. Like, so multiple people, and then other people were just confused. But it was just like, oh no, like it's not Slade Wilson. Because like for context, for people who might not, this would be like if Deathstroke took off his mask instead of Slade Wilson, it was an almost dead 12-year-old girl or whatever. And so that's the thing. And so like just to get ahead of it, like, so this is a potentially really cool idea. Potentially. The idea of like this undead Terminator character is a tiny hurt girl inside or something, that could be really dark and interesting. But the way the movie ends...
that's in movie A. Like, where if you kept it consistently, that's pretty cool.
Right, yeah. There need to be shots of like her like strapped up to a machine, she's missing limbs, and she's like being resurrected like Frankenstein's monster.
Or like Darth Vader.
Or like Darth Vader or something. Yeah, minus that. But like that would have been really cool. But this movie ends with like she gets hit with that like Black Widow freeing miracle cure, and like she's like crying and starts her hands. It's like, it's okay, I forgive you. And it's like, oh my, can you imagine this with like Deadpool or Deathstroke or like Deadshot or something, or any of those characters?
Yeah, I didn't even think she was under the poison. I would have just thought she has
was
a
mad
very
that she got
reasonable
blown up.
reason to try and kill
You
Scarjo.
murdered me in front of my dad.
Yeah.
Therefore, I am mad.
I thought that would have been great if like he turned around and was like, and I haven't even put the poison in her. It's just like, whoa, that's scary. Like, how do I?
She hates women, you know?
Yeah.
something.
But that would have been great because then it would be like, you can't just use some sort of antidote to make her
Right.
not evil. Like, what if some of these girls, because of their trauma, just hated the world? So now they have a reason. They're like, I just kill people now because I like it. Like, that would have been
right.
totally practical instead of turning them into a new faction. Because now we just have factions in the Marvel universe.
Yeah, now there's just a team of Black Widows.
There's a team of Black Widows. There's a team of Wakandans. There's a team of there's the whole power broker is like a faction, basically.
Madripoor. Yeah, where Taskmaster works out of sometimes in the comics. But
Julia Louis-Dreyfus is a faction, I guess. And then you have the people who transform. What are they called? The aliens?
Oh, Skrulls.
The Skrulls are a faction. And so you just have like...
And then there'll be mutants and presumably Inhumans.
And we're going to have a battle of the 5 armies. They're going to call Peter Jackson and it's not going to be good. It's just like... I don't know. It's weird.
We'll take a screenplay from Guillermo del Toro and ruin it.
That's right. Yeah.
So I kind of was hoping because what I also was like, okay, because I keep going like, well, what they could do is have a thing where like Taskmaster silently decides not to kill Black Widow and goes on Taskmaster's own way to do what Taskmaster does in the comics, where he's just kind of like a mercenary character who depending on who hires him, Taskmaster could be an anti-hero or a bad guy.
Which is cool. That's why Deathstroke is kind of interesting.
Yeah. And the other thing is Taskmaster often gets hired by organizations to like train their soldiers and stuff. So that's a really easy way to like Taskmaster could be part of Elaine's evil Avengers group, where Taskmaster could be their version of Hawkeye or whatever, you know. But it said it's like
Elaine.
I keep forgetting the character name.
I always say Maggie Lizer too. I think it's Fontaine is her last name.
Fontaine, that's a great name.
A very comic book villain
Instead, Taskmaster is just crying on the ground, and the Black Widows who are all been freed from their shackles and chains. Let's take her with us too. And so, just like, I don't know, it's a brief character introduction. We don't have enough to go on. I hope that Taskmaster. I tweeted this. I hope Taskmaster shows up in 15 more Marvel projects, and they never reference her backstory ever again. Like, it's just unspoken.
And never takes the helmet off.
Why? There's just like, you know, a young adult woman in there with half a face who's just killing people for unknown reasons, which is cool. That'd be cool.
Well, it's like in the Gears of War franchise, there's the Carmine family, and like they're the only soldiers that pretty much always wear the helmets. And like at some point, that's a pretty cool trait. Like, just let them keep their helmet on, and that adds to their mystery. And so like, it's sort of like how in Star Wars Episode 7, when like before everyone realized Adam Driver's a great actor, when Kylo Ren takes his helmet off and you just see him, you're like, oh, that's what he looks like. Like, I'm nothing against him.
It's the quiet guy at Starbucks working on a screenplay.
Yeah,
okay.
You know, he just looks like a hipster. You're not like afraid of him anymore. Not that he was all that intimidating in 7, but he looks like a hipster film bro. And so immediately a lot of tension is lost from his character. And so that kind of is the same thing here, where it's just like, it's scary because she's disabled. Like, that's not good. Come on, Marvel. That's pretty messed up.
Right. I think she'd be great nonverbal, like I said, Samus Aran, where it's like at key moments she takes off her helmet. Like, because there's potential there. There's a potential where like, let's say she's taking out a bunch of terrorists, and there's like one like kid who's she's rescuing. In a moment to comfort the kid, she takes off her helmet and like comforts the kid and puts it back on.
Yeah, like the Mandalorian.
The Mandalorian. Like, you could just do the Mandalorian thing.
Make it a plot point.
But with like a large cast of Marvel characters, you know, I think there's potential there. Or it doesn't do that. Or Taskmaster's just a nameless assassin who murders people, which is always a popular thing that fans will always love. So,
because rivals are cool. I don't know why. It seems like in Eastern storytelling, rivals are a big thing. Because I can, like, Gurren Lagann has rivals, Dragon Ball has rivals, and it's just like a lot of stories will have rivals, and then in the West there's not a lot, but like rivals are a cool plot point where if you wanted to continue this, like Florence Pugh is the new Black Widow type story, and then Taskmaster keeps showing up. Like, if Taskmaster was like, it is now my duty to kill ScarJo's family or something like that, then it's just like terrifying. We're like, all right, the end of the stinger for Black Widow is Julia Louis-Dreyfus says, hey, here's your new target. It's Hawkeye. So
Yeah, because Hawkeye killed Black Widow. Is what
right.
she says.
And you know what? I'm all right. Jeremy Renner, let's go, guy. Hawkeye's not that interesting. And so
he could be. I'm saying he could be. Watch the show.
That's fair. That's fair. But I mean, Infinity War is great, and he wasn't in it. Endgame isn't, and he's in it. I think there's something fishy there. Let's just ponder these realities.
I mean, you're one of the only people that doesn't like Endgame, though. So
I know. It's just too long and boring.
I loved Endgame.
But in that series, if it was like Taskmaster wanted to like just showed up, and it's just like she's just getting in the way, and so you could have a really cool sequence of like Taskmaster's trying to get Flo Pugh, but Flo Pugh's like, I can't beat Taskmaster, but I still need to get Hawkeye. And so now you have this chasing sequence where they're all running into each other, and Flo Pugh's about to get Hawkeye, but then Taskmaster shows up, and now Flo Pugh has to deal with Taskmaster, so Hawkeye runs away.
Then Kate Bishop evens the odds, I
mean, you almost get that in Falcon. Like, that's what makes that one episode so great, is Falcon and Bucky are trying to get the Flag Smashers, and then US Agent shows up and just ruins everything. And so, like, all of it's really cool, multi-layered tension, but then she just turns into a good guy at the end of this movie. Maybe. Like, that's it. That's her character arc's finished. And she's like in the movie for 12 minutes total.
It's a cool suit.
Yeah.
That's half.
At the end of the day,
that's half the
channel
battle,
the comic book nerd in you. It is a cool suit.
It's a really cool suit. It's the whole reason Boba Fett is still
it's like a Destiny character.
Well, that's why Boba Fett is still a character to this day. Is it's a cool suit.
Yeah, it is a cool
That's why
suit.
they keep making Venom and Punisher stuff. Is it's a cool logo you can put on stuff.
Yeah,
it's half the battle. Like so.
Oh man. Well, okay, so there's not a lot of plot. There's not a lot to really draw from this, but on a more metatextual level, we've had, because I definitely wanted to go into this before we really close out and get into our recommendations, but we've had, and I mentioned this multiple times, but 2021, when it comes to like Phase 4 Marvel, has shown that like these shows are really good, even when they're not so great. They're still pretty interesting because they're tackling bigger topics. They're drawing on their genre nature more often. Like WandaVision is just very comic booky. That's just a fact. Falcon and Winter Soldier is very modern and be doing what comic books have done for years, which is talk about politics through art. And then even Loki is just your stereotypical science fiction where it's just talking about grand life concepts such as, I mean, Loki even has a Blade Runner moment where they purposely go to a location where it's raining and there's neon lights and they talk about memories. Yeah. And so like they're drawing on a lot of really cool concepts for science fiction, such as free will. They're talking about like the value of individuality, loving yourself in the midst of a like broader philosophical concept, all really cool. And then you have Black Widow, which is kind of about nothing, like at the end of the day. And there's 2 movies going on, just like in every middling Marvel movie, which is always kind of like there's 2 movies going on. The movie you wanted, the movie Edgar Wright wanted to make, and then the movie Feige decided they prefer, and they make Ant-Man. Like, do people want that? Like at the end of the day, I think I guess I can't talk about people, but like, do we want that? For us, like, what do we care about? Like, what do we want? For me, I was tired with this. I thought it was fun and okay, but for the most part, I would have preferred something a little more serious. That's why the title card is weird and uncomfortable and bizarre.
It's good stuff, though.
But I was like, yeah, give me that. I want that movie. Let's get into it. And then they don't. And that's why I liked the very overt Weinstein stuff at the end, where they're clearly mocking him and using that as a concept to draw from. And then the rest was boring. So for me, I'm much more in line with like, yeah, if we're going to get more Marvel movies, like I would prefer if Shang-Chi wasn't just constant fights with CG going around, but more, I don't know. I don't know anything about Shang-Chi, but the trailer doesn't look very interesting to me based on what they're talking about. If it's tournaments, that'd be sick. That'd be awesome. But it doesn't look like they're doing tournaments. Looks like that might be one sequence where we get Abomination in for a minute.
There's an Iron Fist comic where they get drawn to like a big fighting tournament, and that'd be great. Shang-Chi and Iron Fist.
Give me Marvel Mortal Kombat. That'd be awesome.
That'd be dope.
Give me that episode of What If, where it's like you only get out if you die. Or no, if you kill everyone else. They'd be like, what is it? The Deadpool versus Avengers thing?
There's Deadpool kills the Avengers. There's a couple of different comics like that where they just like, it's about what happens in one, like the Punisher kills the Avengers is another one. Or Punisher kills the Marvel Universe or something.
Yeah, like something. So give me the weird stuff. This Black Widow thing was just sort of like, you're back in the movie theaters. Remember what you like in the movies? You like popcorn and you like complaining and you like talking during scenes that aren't about people punching each other.
Yeah. I just want one of the, like, I give me a serious noir spy movie with a Marvel character. Lean into the genres that these characters play into. You know, what made the Blade movies interesting is they just made horror movies. Basically, they made action horror movies. And granted, it's before the big comic book movie craze.
Before Spider-Man 1 and X-Men 1.
Pre-X-Men, pre-Spider-Man, you know, they made Blade. And that's what made those movies genre favorites. People liked watching a dude kill vampires, you know. I feel like we say this every Marvel movie, which is there's a good movie in here, and then we talk about what we want, and what we want is usually like, you make a Black Widow. The Black Widow movie should have just been a Jason Bourne movie. There shouldn't be any MacGuffins, secret serums, just her running from Taskmaster, and at the end of the movie they kill the bad guy, and but they had to figure out using actual espionage, which is what frustrates me. They didn't use any espionage. They just went to the person that had the answers. That's it. There's no detective work. There's no shaking down informants.
Yeah,
there's none of
it's
that.
like Nolan Batman, where like there's really no detective work. It's just like, where is he? And then punching.
He spies on people.
Yeah,
that's it.
Doesn't do much. Yeah.
Give me that. Like, because in Shang-Chi, however you want to say it, like, give me a Kung Fu movie. Give me a Kung Fu movie with some weird stuff in it. That's what I want. And then, you know, whatever the heck Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness is, weird acid trip. Give me a weird acid trip. And I know Spider-Man is not yet confirmed to be a Spider-Verse movie, even though it seems pretty obvious that that's what they're doing.
Right.
Give me that. Like, get weird, get creative, embrace the genres that you're making movies in. Because at the end of the day, we're coming up, once Eternals comes out, that's 30 Marvel movies. 30 of these. You can't keep making the same movie over and over again.
And I think even Kevin Feige said after Phase 3, he intends to be more out there. And people have been really receptive to that with the series.
Loki is the most streamed TV show in the world right now.
It's great.
Right?
It's fantastic. Yeah. It's something you can even recommend to someone who's never watched a Marvel movie, because the first episode catches you up and then throws you into a totally unseen world before. Because it's really not about like them being Marvel characters in the Avengers. It's just about Loki. And everything's very tightly about that. Because, like, even WandaVision requires a bit of background knowledge to feed the drama. I mean, I couldn't imagine just watching with a random person in WandaVision, and then you get to Catherine Hahn going, like, you're dead, to Vision, and someone going, what? like that's what makes it so emotional. So you'd be losing that. But Loki, you could just be like, yeah, dude, check it out. You don't need nothing for this.
Yeah. And like Loki also uses source material successfully. You know, there's that scene where he gets trapped in a time loop and it's him and Lady Sif.
Yeah.
That, like, Lady Sif has not been in a Marvel thing since I think season two of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. She had an appearance, making her the only actor to play the same Marvel character across every area of the MCU, which is really impressive. But like, that's a fun way to use your source material. Like, hey, here's like, even if you don't have context for that, like, she goes, Loki, you cut off my hair. That's it. That's all you need as a viewer to understand.
Right.
And for nerds, and then this most recent episode, which you haven't seen yet, there's tons of like Marvel Easter eggs and references that are fun as background details for the fans. But if you don't know, it totally works still. You know, it's a whole new thing, which is Black Widow is in this weird middle ground where it really plays heavily off of previous continuity, but doesn't really do anything interesting or new. introduces some fun character. Like I want to see more of Red Guardian.
Totally.
I want to see more of Florence Pugh. I want to see more of Taskmaster.
Yeah.
And if it's not a version of the character I'm a huge fan of, I think it's potential. But it's just like, this is the one that I think is going to get skipped during like the repeat viewings. When people do the Marvel marathons to catch up before a big event or whatever, I can picture people being like, well, do we have to watch Black Widow? I don't know. It's like 2.5 hours. And
it's like Incredible Hulk, where it's sort of like you don't need it. It doesn't feed anything.
He's introduced in the Avengers.
Yeah.
Basically.
Right.
And that's better than the movie. I mean, apparently they're bringing back Abomination, and Thunderbolt Ross has been a bunch of stuff. So now it's retroactively kind of important. Like Thor 2 is retroactively really important now between Endgame and the Loki show.
Right.
Like there's tons of stuff in there that's important now, but which is part of the whole Disney Marvel thing. They know how to get their hooks in you. So
yeah.
But yeah, it's Black Widow. I didn't hate it because I see a lot of people who hated this movie.
That's interesting. Yeah, because I don't hate it either. I just think it's like, it's the next one I saw it and done.
It's definitely a Marvel movie.
Yes.
It has strong characters. The weakness is compared to other ones that are weak, I don't have a strong attachment initially to them. Like Thor 2 and Iron Man 2 are not good movies, but you still like the characters.
That last rewatch of Iron Man 2 though, I really liked it. I don't know why. Something about it was
Mickey
just
Rourke.
Like, something was just so right because it was so bizarre and made just watch it knowing it's not that good. And it makes it really fun to watch. Like, why is Elon Musk in this movie? It makes me really uncomfortable.
He's canonically in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
It's so bad.
You're more likely to see him again than any character from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is crazy.
Yeah.
There's some stuff in here that's good. If you're a Marvel acolyte, if you're a Marvel faithful, I'm sure you'll find a reason to like it. It's not a great martial arts spy action Bourne movie. It's not a great Marvel movie. It's not a great science fiction film. There's some really strong character family drama with the scene where they're all sitting at dinner is like the best scene in the whole movie because you really get everyone's character really well. All the actors.
There's some good acting for Flo Pugh for her acting reel. Of course, she doesn't need one.
Everyone here gives 110%, and they're really. Even Ray Winstone's limited the limited screen time does a lot. Rachel Weisz is great. David Harbour is doing everything he can with the material he's given. Scarlett Johansson, I think, is sometimes underrated as an actor.
She's good.
I think she has a really like steady, easy screen charisma where I think she's just very watchable, and she really sells it. Like there's one scene where you just see her alone, just doing what she's doing. She's just watching James Bond and reciting all the lines, and that like 10 seconds. It's like, she's really likable.
She's great.
I wish there was more of this in the movie.
Marriage Story and Jojo Rabbit. I mean, she killed it with those. Super, super good.
I think because she gets cast in these movies, they just play up her looks. And I think she doesn't get a chance to really show what she can do. I'm not saying she's the best actor ever or anything. But
they never have her do much except for in like Marriage Story and Jojo Rabbit, where she does a lot. She's very good in those.
Yeah, and I was kind of hoping this would be one of those, where she gets to show off her acting chops, which she gets to do a little bit in some of those scenes with just her and Florence Pugh, but like she spends a lot of time kicking and flipping.
It is annoying though when your only downtimes are scenes where characters are drinking or eating. I think that's just sort of a boring narrative thing. And a lot of this movie kind of has that.
There's one driving scene that I liked with the jacket, but yeah, it's like they needed to have a scene where they, as a family, try to have a family game night or something.
Yeah,
that would have been great.
Totally.
Right? They're trying to play Monopoly, and like they're Red Guardians disagreeing about how the economics of the game should work, and then they're arguing about the rules, and one person's trying to cheat. That would have been awesome.
And then it's like a flashback to like, why are we fake playing? And then you have your characters break down and it's emotional. It's good drama. Yeah, that'd be good. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
But that's not the movie. That's not movie A or B.
That is our fan fiction movie where, there should have been, I'm trying to think like maybe there should have been a scene where like they're trading fighting techniques or something because they all know how to fight, but they all fight differently, Or they try and help Red Guardian with his costume. Like they try and give him a new costume or something. Or
they're like holding his pants out so he can jump off the bed. Kind of like with skinny jeans. You got to jump off your bed and land in them.
Oh, those are the days.
That would have been sick. I wish he did more than just get shot with a couple of tranquilizers. That would have been so fun.
I got laughs from my theater, but I was like, that would have been his coming out moment. Like He should have wrecked shot.
All of his scenes got laughs, but I was not interested.
His comedy is very hidden. There's that weird scene where like he's like, "Is it your time of the month?" And they're like, "No, all of our reproductive organs are ripped out of our bodies." And I think they were trying.
Yeah, thanks. This is your fault, Dad.
They were trying to kind of make it funny, but it's like a horrifying.
Yeah, that's a terrible thing. It's not funny. It's like I don't know. I don't know what this movie is.
It's dark comedy that he doesn't understand why it's such a big deal. Like, I'm fine with that, but the fact that Florence Pugh is trying to like, you know how they reached up there, this grabbed everything, and she's repeating the line over and over again, trying to make it a joke, but it's like, no, this was literally played as like the tragic backstory moment in Age of Ultron with Scarlett Johansson, where she mentions she can't have kids.
Right.
So like, it's too late to try and retroactively make it funny. That's weird. I don't know why you're trying to do this movie.
That's probably movie A. Because movie A could probably get away with some dark humor because you kind of have to balance out your traumatic dying
it's not the time
stuff
in the movie though. Like
it isn't. Yeah, they just picked him up. The guy just got in the airplane.
The stuff where he's like, "Whoa, you can't hear me because I'm not wearing the headphones." That's fine. Right? He puts on the headphones and now they can't escape his voice. That's funny. But then he just keeps talking and they don't have it. And then there's some tragic comedy where he's talking about how he's like a loser and stuff. Like that stuff's great. But him just being like, there's some other stuff in the movie where it's just like
Flo Pugh goes into the living or the bedroom just to get time alone, and I thought it was going to be a sweet moment when he's like, "Okay, I'll just sit with you," and I'm like, "Good, yes, get some good like." Yeah. He's a human being. He's not just a comic relief character. And then they cut back, and he's just a comic relief character.
My dad had to urinate on my hands.
This is so stupid. Like
they do have a nice wrap up to the scene where they're seeing American Pie together, because partially because Florence Pugh again really sells that moment. But like, yeah, it would have been great if he had legitimately just sat there. Like that would have been worked way better. It would have been much more emotional. Like if
he just sits there. Maybe he steps out of the room later, and then you sort of get a close-up of Flo Pugh's character reacting to the fact that he didn't do anything. And so then it's just like, oh, that was a sweet moment. And then it would make him getting hit by tranquilizers more emotional, because it's like, hey, if my dad can support me emotionally, now he can support me physically by fighting while we're trying to get away. And then it's just comedy. Like
two edits. First, they should have sat in silence. And then after a bit, he starts humming American Pie.
Yeah.
And then she starts singing it. And then they start singing together. So they naturally start interacting after being uncomfortable.
I thought he was going to just get shot and die in that scene.
I thought he was going to tragically sacrifice it. But like
that would have been terrifying if he died in that. I thought that would have been great. I was like, this is Invincible. It's happening. Like movie A is coming back.
Omni-Man just comes in and crushes his head of his hands. I'm fine with him getting taken out with a bunch of tranquilized darts, but it should have been after taking on a bunch of guys. Like he slowly takes more arrows, like in Lord of the Rings.
He gets hit with a tranquilizer and is like, "This is nothing." And he's still fighting, raging, but then he's getting hit with more, so he's falling apart. And like Flo Pugh's like, "Dad!" And so then you have the narrative structure of singing that song. And the lyrics, "This will be the day that I die," and then you're seeing him fall apart. So you're like, "Oh my god, she's gonna die!"
As they're fighting, then they just sort of like start playing the song over the soundtrack, and the song gets louder and louder as they're like fighting off waves of guys together.
Been great, and then like, because then him being like alive would have been kind of cool, and fighting Taskmaster would have been. Well, he doesn't need to fight Taskmaster. The end of his arc is that scene, and then he's alive at the end. And that's cool. He shows up on the Sky City with the helicopter. Get in, guys! And then the other guy,
the Russian army, and they play the Russian national anthem, Soviet anthem.
Yeah. It's so awesome.
There's a thing in the comics where Taskmaster can't necessarily beat Deadpool because Deadpool doesn't have a set fighting style. Because he's so
he's just
LOL South Park humor random that he can't predict his fighting style. That should have been what happened with Red Guardian, where he's such a schlub with no
he does like, drunk fighting, like Jackie Chan's drunk fighting
style, where like he's so unpredictable because he's such like just a barroom brawler that they should have been able to hold his own for a little bit with Taskmaster. I think that would have been funny.
Yeah,
if like they show the head visories like scanning him and he's just like stumbling around,
just question
like,
marks
like, error, error.
It's so cool.
You know, that would have been cool.
I guess our recommendation is new script, please.
Watch all the things they're referencing. Watch Drunken Master. Watch Invincible. Read the comics, read the stuff with Deadpool and Taskmaster. That stuff's good. It's one of those things where like I know every fan thinks they know better than a movie, and all the people put their time and effort. And Kate Shortland does not need her approval. She directed a ton of great movies, and I don't think she does a bad job. Like what I'm saying is like all the people involved in the movie did a good job. Kate Shortland is a good director.
Right, it's a fine 5-6 out of 10 movie. It's fine.
Yeah, it's okay. It's weird where it's like everyone's constantly like, oh, these Marvel movies are so boring, they're all the same. But then like you can clearly point out when one of them's not as good as the other ones.
Yeah, and this one's fine.
So it's like there's a certain stamp of quality that you expect, and Black Widow I think doesn't quite hit it. Though there's, like we've said, there's good stuff in it. So
it's just I would say it hits it because I think the stamp is middling for me. It's like these are fine movies. They're inoffensive and they're exciting and they're fun, and it's cool to see what directors want to do versus what they kind of have to do.
Right.
And it's really cool when you get the director who is able to do what they have to do in the way they want to, because like that's the whole Guardians movies entirely. It just feels like they have to hit certain notes, but James Gunn is like, fine, I'll do it my way. And then you're watching a prison breakout where thousands of people die.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's so cool.
Well, in this movie, I'm pretty sure they killed a whole prison of people.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. I was like, I don't think they're getting out. I think we're about to get like how the Thing is canon in the freaking Marvel universe. It's like, all right.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to some of this stuff. Like as much as like Eternals and Shang-Chi like have this like weird thing where fans aren't really sure what to make of them, they do feel like they let people make movies. You know, they look like movies made by people who want to make movies.
As opposed to Phase 2. That was the most
film by committee thing.
Yeah, that was pretty rough.
And like even now, like DC, like they're promoting the Suicide Squad like a James Gunn film, a new film from James Gunn. Like they're really like, this is a movie by a guy you like, that we let him make the movie. Please believe us, faith in us. And then like Taika Waititi's like currently is doing interviews where he's like, oh man, Thor: Love and Thunder is so crazy. I couldn't even believe they let me do it. Which I know he's just like talking up his movie, because there's no way that like Disney is gonna let a rogue filmmaker make something truly bizarre and wild.
Him dressed up as Hitler shows up. It's a crossover.
But a good guy. He's a variant Hitler. You know, he tried to save all of the Jews. You know,
yeah.
They wouldn't let him do that. That's crazy. But like,
give me that movie.
It does show promise that they're like, okay, like we have enough money now, and like. They're in that thing where I don't know if you know this about like with the WWE, because of like distribution deals, they're more profitable than they've ever been in their entire existence, even though their ratings are at record lows. And like Disney's in that similar position where like they could make like 10 duds and they wouldn't matter. Their bottom line's fine, you know.
Totally.
So I hopefully they get more comfortable with that, especially with like Disney Plus model. Where if you just want to be part of the conversation, you got to be watching Loki. You got to watch Loki. So you got to subscribe. So the money's in the pocket. So take some risks, guys. I know Black Widow was made like a million years ago. So.
Yeah.
But
anyways, recommendations. What you got for us, Dan?
So going with the commentary recommendation for this week, I'm going to recommend the commentary on the New Testament use of the Old Testament by G.K. Beale and D.A. Carson, two of the premier New Testament scholars that exist. It is an invaluable resource for any library if you're serious about biblical study or just having like a filled out library. It really sheds insight into callbacks to the Old Testament and the recontextualizing of things, fulfillment of prophecy, which is something, especially if you're talking about like Jesus fulfilled tons of Old Testament prophecy about the Messiah. A lot of times when Paul's writing, he references things from the Old Testament that his audience will be familiar with. It's just a really great, specific, specialized commentary to have in your library. And it's kind of interesting. It's not a verse by verse commentary like some other ones are, because not every verse of the Bible is a callback to the Old Testament. But it really is just good to have on hand if you're doing any sort of study in a New Testament book. It's become kind of popular in some circles to almost disregard the Old Testament specifically.
That's weird. The Old Testament's great. I love the Old Testament.
Well, it's really important for a lot of reasons.
It's to understand the New Testament.
I'm blanking on his name right now, but hold on. He wrote... There's a specific guy.
Like a specific guy who says like
screw off Old Testament, I'm going home, or something like that.
Yes, Andy Stanley. Here with the book Communicating for a Change, which is a very good book. It's not a bad speaker. But he says some things that I don't agree with. Particularly, he holds the idea that pastors should just focus on like 15 life-changing truths to preach through. Because his opinion is you'll never preach the whole Bible, which I actually disagree with. I think that is definitely possible.
That's totally possible.
I know people who've done that. They preach the Bible pretty regularly in a cycle throughout their church, where if you are just in the same church, which I think is a good idea in a lot of ways, for most of your life, you will hear the whole Bible preached. But he also kind of de-emphasizes the Old Testament because his kind of, and I don't want to misrepresent his position. You feel free to look into it on your own, but just sort of gleaned from his interviews and podcast appearances and so forth. The idea is that like the Old Testament, he doesn't decanonize the Old Testament, but his view is kind of like all the important stuff is covered in the New Testament. It's kind of his view, which I disagree with.
Yeah.
But part of it's because you don't fully understand everything in the New Testament without understanding the Old Testament. So this commentary, I think, is a good starting place outside of just, going through the Old Testament yourself, which you should. But as a general rule of thumb, if you're like doing Bible study or you're just doing devotional time and your devotions are in the New Testament, it's a good book to have on hand. So commentary on the New Testament usage of the Old Testament by Beale and Carson. And so you also want me to recommend something else, I'm assuming.
I'll pop in and do my recommendation for your
sure
non-Bible one. But I'm sure a lot of listeners are already checking this out. But Christianity Today has been doing a podcast called The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill.
Oh, it's so good.
It's great.
It's so good.
I'm really enjoying it. I love that if you're a fan of Truth's podcast, as I am, as we've had Chris Sterren on the podcast already twice and probably again soon, The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill does a similar system of looking into the past to understand the Christian church now, but it's specifically talking about the rise and fall of Mars Hill. And just the quick background for those who haven't listened, Mars Hill is the church that was grown by Mark Driscoll and many other people, which it sounds like their next episode is going to expand upon. But Mark Driscoll is known as sort of like an infamous figure in Christian circles based upon his I don't need to explain all of it, but very toxic way of preaching scripture and evangelizing and talking about a lot of things, and how it's almost sort of like Dan, how movies have subtext.
I'm familiar, yes.
And then some movies just have text. It's sort of like Mark Driscoll was subtext for a lot of people until it was clear that actually he was just text. And it was clear that a lot of what produce the fall of Mars Hill, and is one of the angles that Mike Cosper, the host of the podcast, is taking, is how the same text that Mark Driscoll carried is a similar text that a lot of other churches are struggling with. And oftentimes, and he comes from some experience of himself of starting a church and it not working out. I believe he often references a couple times, not all the time. It sounds like he, is doing great now, but it's really good. It's going into the history of how, what influences did Mark Driscoll draw from? You're hearing some other big church names and how they, I think I've really enjoyed specifically the episode when it's talking about how Gen X was feeling like they weren't reached out to. And so then certain pastors were noticing that. So, boomer pastors were saying, we're not really hitting Gen X well. Let's try and figure out how to preach the gospel to them and draw them in. And then as they're doing that, they're pendulum swinging perhaps too far, which seems to be one of the angles that Mike Cosper is going into. And I found that interesting because that's sort of seems to be the case with every new generation. I mean, now you're having not just millennials, but Zoomers, where it's like, we're not catching millennials and Zoomers. Let's figure out how to preach and reach out to them. And so I think that, one of the main through lines that Cosper wants to get at is, how can pendulum swinging be potentially dangerous when it goes too far? And what are some signs you can catch for that? How is Mark Driscoll and his broader context affecting other churches, and how is celebrity pastoring dangerous and perhaps too much for people to carry? It's really good. Currently 3 episodes. I don't know what the release schedule is. I thought it was once a week, but then I feel like that 3rd episode took 2 weeks to come out. I can't remember. I'm literally going to check the date now because I don't know. No, it looks like it's pretty much every week. Definitely recommend it. Really compelling, really well produced. So that's it. The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill. Daniel, what's your other general recommendation?
So I was thinking about recommending that podcast as well, but since you recommended it, I will not.
So I recommend it, but Daniel, he says, don't check it out.
No,
Can't recommend it.
avoid. Great stuff, especially if you're in kind of the whole Christian sphere. Like it's a topic that I remember when this whole thing with Mark Driscoll was really coming to surface. I was very much in a lot of Reformed circles, and so I just remember the whole thing happening, and so getting this kind of insight. And I appreciate how they go back. When they go back to the roots of this, they don't go back like 10 years. They go all the way back to like the 60s and 70s.
Oh, yeah.
With
Totally.
And so it's they really dig into just not just Driscoll, but the cultural soil that led to someone like him coming up in the first place. So I really appreciate that.
Right. They're talking about a system. And that's kind of their broader idea, which I love. I love systems thinking. I think it's very healthy.
My other recommendation is also going to be a book. I'm going to recommend a book called The Prayer That Turns the World Upside Down by Albert Mohler. And it is a book about the Lord's Prayer. And so my pastor and I were doing a thing about prayer, and we're thinking about even making the whole church retreat about it in the future. Albert Mohler, certainly not somebody that our listeners will be unfamiliar with. He does he has a great podcast that I highly recommend called The Briefing, which is a look at the current news cycle. I think it's daily, which is just insane.
Wow.
Look at the news from a Christian perspective. I don't know where the guy finds time to sleep. But this book is, I managed to get it through a sale, but he just breaks down the Lord's Prayer, and he breaks down what we can learn about prayer from it. And it's just a really, really good refresher. And prayer is something that in theory we're all doing. But I think some people make the mistake of looking at prayer as this like no rules, no regulations, everyone prays differently kind of thing, which to an extent is very true. However, there are biblical like guidelines of what prayer looks like and what it means to pray and what the goal of prayer is and why we do it in the first place. I think it can get lost in the whole thing of just, it seems for some people, I think prayer might be obligatory and just this thing that they've been forced to do their whole life, or they have sort of a vague idea of it, where everyone is familiar with it to an extent where everyone thinks they understand it, which I don't think is necessarily true. And so this is a great quick read. It's like maybe 130 pages, and the pages have big type and they're small pages. And so it's a really quick read. It's a great refresher. It breaks down what Jesus is teaching us through the Lord's Prayer as it was he gave the disciples as a model for what it means to pray. Actually, it's a good companion piece. This is a little more obscure, but there's a guy named Professor Ken Bailey who he was big in the 80s, and he wrote the best Corinthians commentary I've ever read in my life. But he also has a breakdown of the Lord's Prayer that's really great. It's older and it might be a little hard to find, but if you can get your hands on that, that's great. But a much easier resource is The Prayer That Turns the World Upside Down by Albert Mohler. Highly recommend it. Great quick read, and it's pretty inexpensive. So,
and what's the title for the Ken Bailey one?
He just had a thing for the Lord's Prayer. Actually, let me see if I can grab it. I'm in my office, right? I'm in my office, so there's just stuff that like is just everywhere. So it's called The Lord's Prayer: A Middle Eastern Cultural View by Kenneth E. Bailey.
Oh, cool.
He has tons of videos, and the videos start off really boring. They're all 30 minutes, but then like halfway through, the videos really get really good. Every single one I start, and I'm like, this is the most driest, most boring thing in the world. But then as he goes along, he really picks up steam, and they're really great. So Kenneth E. Bailey, Lord's Prayer, highly recommend that. The Prayer That Turns the World Upside Down by Albert Mohler.
Thanks so much for checking out this episode of Cinematic Doctrine. If you enjoyed this episode, consider leaving a review and subscribing to the podcast. And as mentioned before, Cinematic Doctrine has a Patreon. For as little as $3 a month, you're opted into a once-a-month movie poll where you decide a movie we discuss on the podcast. There are other unique benefits that come with supporting the podcast, so be sure to check that out at patreon.com/Cinematic Doctrine. A special shout out to those who support at the Art House Theater tier on Patreon. Thank you so much, Mom, Dad, Melanie, Shirley-Ann, and Thomas. You guys are the best, and your continued monetary support is greatly appreciated. Until next time, stay cool.
I forgot to mention something because I mentioned that all the people in the theater are going to come back later as characters. During the post-credit scene, when they're showing Black Widow's grave, the little girls next to me were like, "What? When did she die? When did this happen?" And they're freaking out. And then like Elaine shows up and she was confused. And then like the guys next to me turn to the girls and go, "Oh, so this takes place after Endgame, where Black Widow died, and that woman is from Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and she's going around." And I just got up and left. I was like, "I'm not sitting here for like this."
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
Want some Cinematic Doctrine swag? You're in luck. We've got 3-inch Cinematic Doctrine logo stickers exclusive for Patreon supporters. Perfect for your travel mug or laptop. Head over to patreon.com/Cinematic Doctrine, link in the show notes, and choose the Independent Theater tier. Doing so will net you other perks too. But let's be real, the podcast stickers are the coolest perk. So get yourself some podcast stickers by supporting on Patreon.